when we look at a number of things around mindset and how we manage our energy, and really, this is a topic we've come up with before, and I've shared this in terms of my attachment to possessions. The more, I guess, the older I've gotten, perhaps the less I'm interested in material things. But that's me. There's lots of young people that listen to this, and there's lots of those individuals who don't look at things materially like I do. And so the point of it is that when we consider energy management, if you will, emotional management, it's, do we own things or do the things own us? And that really is kind of one of the questions. So, you buy a nice car, you buy a nice diamond, you buy a nice thing, whatever that might be. Do you own it or does it own you? So when I look at something, I say to myself, I don't want to own it because I don't want to insure it. I don't want to wash it. We're talking about boats or cars or any of those kind of material things in that regard. I don't want to have to worry about losing it. But the minute I'm worried about losing it, it owns me. The minute I'm worried about denting it, scratching it, having it devalue, then it owns me. So the point of this, I guess, is that when we look at the material things that we want to own, we have to be, I guess, aware. It'd be good guidance, perhaps, to be aware of, do you own it or does it own you? And I say, does it own you mentally, emotionally, spiritually, energetically? And just something to be aware of when in a world of the polarity, the divisiveness, the comparativeness, the social media, where we get those snapshots of those moments in time of the family or the person driving the Lamborghini or walking down the beach in a ultra modern, cool facility that they're staying at. Do those scenarios own us or do we own those scenarios? And that is really the power of detachment, which is a little bit different than the power of now what, or a lot different, perhaps. I don't know if I can link those two or not.
They're totally linked.
Okay, well, link them for me because I brought it up. I just wanted to go down that path.
Well, it's not a rabbit hole at all. It's totally linked. Think about it. If you're in a situation where you're uncertain, or you've got that uneasy feeling and you have to make a decision, one of the filters could be, now I've made the decision. You visualize, you look up on, you say, okay, I'm disassociating. I'm going to see my life with that thing. I've made the decision. I got the outcome that I wanted. I bought that helicopter, for example. Okay, Now what? Well, did I buy it because of who I get to be because I have a helicopter, or because my neighbors know I have a helicopter? So if my neighbors didn't know I had a helicopter, would I still want a helicopter? So the power of now what? I've made the decision. Now what? Now what? Now I'm attached to the image, or maybe I'm attached. So to get all the way through the decision, and the power of the now what decision is now what's next. To your point, did I do it from a place of what really serves me, aligns with my values? It lights me up. It serves me. It ticks all the buttons of the things that I need and want in my life, but not from a place of ego. And I think that's what the power of now what's really taught me, is that when I make a decision, I try to go through to the outcome, to the end game, and then look backwards and say, you know what? I really don't need a helicopter. I only wanted it because my neighbors had one and they thought I would be cool. Or whatever that thing is. It could be a new pair of shoes. I don't care. Whatever that is. I mean, I've changed a lot over being a pack rat and seeing and moving as many times as we had, and look at all the stuff around here. And you have a really good message when it comes to looking at stuff. You just see little piles of money everywhere. Every pair of shoes, you go, there's $100, $200, $200, $200. And I've really learned that from you over the years, is that we don't need that energy stuck. We don't need that money stuck around. And as I start to purge, and I mean, even my shopping habits have changed because of the power of now what. Now I have to look after that. Now what if I gain weight? What if I lose weight? I've got all this stuff in my closet that I've been purging for the last year, and it's still packed. So
I know. So I want to share a little story, in terms of, do we own something or does it own us? And it's an old story that happened many years ago, but I'll share it anyways. And that is, a friend of mine owned a collector truck, an old truck that he had restored, half done. I don't know, it was a 1942 or 54 or something, very unique. And it was really cool. And he was in the summertime, and he had it parked out in the front of his yard, or in front of his house on the street. And one night he wakes up in the middle of the night and he hears noise. He looks out his window. Sure enough, there's three guys that are broken into his truck. They've got the hood on the truck lifted up. He's a big guy. He runs out there. He like rips the first guy off the truck. And the next thing you know, they're into a fight. Three guys, one guy. He's big enough. He beats a couple guys up. He injures himself. Long story short, police get involved. They show up. They go, tell me what happened. He tells them what happened. And this is a little interesting part of the story, is that he got charged with assault. Now, he got charged with assault. And in hindsight, I talked to a police officer who I knew who was familiar with this particular incident because it was years ago and it was a big deal. And he said, we walked up and we said, what happened? And he said, well, these guys were breaking into my truck. I ran up, I pulled him off, I punched him in the face. Then the other guy attacked me, so I punched him in the face. He told this whole story. And then he said, I said to the guy, says, so you mean he turned around and you thought you were going to be attacked? And he goes, no, like I ripped him off the truck. So he got into this. He was all hyped up about it. The point is this, because he wasn't being attacked. So believe it or not, just the law at the time, I don't know if it still applies, he got charged with assault. Now that's not the end of the story. The rest of the story is he hit somebody in the mouth. He cut his hand, his knuckles on that person's teeth. And sadly, he then got infected. Now, the infection in his hand went up the sheath of his hand where all those tendons in the back of your hand are. And it required 3 different surgeries. Oh, and by the way, in that fight, somebody kicked him or hit him hard in the side of his head, right on his ear, and crushed or did something to his eardrum and his hearing. And now he's virtually deaf in that particular ear. Now, all of that was because he had this attachment to what was going on with his truck. What they were trying to do is steal the starter in his truck. It wasn't until probably 3 years later, after multiple surgeries and lots of challenges, he said to me once, and he goes, I just want to share this fundamental insight. They're going for the starter. They had it half out. And that starter was worth $58. So he said, why didn't I just let them steal the starter? But it was because he had this energy around it, this attachment to it. It literally gave him a handicap in terms of his hand and the surgeries that went along with it, the costs associated with the emotion, the anxiety, the worry, the time off work. Plus, he's permanently deaf in one ear or mostly deaf in one ear, all over a $58 starter or whatever the price was. It was like under $100. The point is this, is are we attached to our stuff? Do we own our stuff or does it own us? This is a perfect example in my world of where that stuff owned him. So the power of now what was look out the window, go maybe phone the police, and then the power of now what is just sit back and let them take the starter. So we get driven by the emotion of the material things that own us. And that was just a great example of that. Any now what comments along that line?
Well, that's a pick your battles. Now what, right? Like how if you're not consciously taking a pause and assessing the situation in the present moment, the now, then if you're in the emotion or hyped up or you're seeing red because you've got this attachment to something, then I think that's where the battle that you pick can be very emotionally driven. And sometimes we can't control that reaction. It's just, I'm just hyped up. I got to make a reaction. I got to take care of my stuff. I got to look after my family. And one thing leads to another. But that I believe is also a trained thing from the
It is.
power of now. If you just, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, it is a trained thing. I think this is all training. This is all Uber awareness. This is about taking our game to the next level. And always, as much as we study this work, we coach this work, we do our podcast. One thing I love about the podcast is every week I'm reminded of things. Every week I'm looking at it and researching different things to kind of go, where do I want to go with it? Rarely do I ever have the whole answer, as you can probably tell. But the point is that what I love about it is that every week it's a reminder. It's like going to the gym. You go every week, you do the work, and it's improvements, subtle improvements every day. So that's kind of my view of that. I don't know where I was going with that, but anything you want to add?
Well, incremental, right? Like the power of now what, the law of attachment or non-attachment also leads to incremental results. So I'm not saying, people say, set these big, hairy, audacious goals or whatever they say. And I'm like, you know what? Just take one step. in the
Mhm.
direction of right action and see where it takes you. Base it on your values. Understand that the now what is uncertain. But if you go and if you take a step and they say, you take a step and the bridge will show up, or you have to be able to let go of one trapeze in order to grab the second one. There's things in those gaps, in those now what moments, that will tell you what's worth being attached to and what's worth not being attached to. And we have the luxury of age, and experience. Let's call it experience. And I think that gives us the opportunities to make new decisions or to make different decisions and not just go around and make the same decisions hoping for a different result. So I think linking the power of now what to truly the law of attachment or non-attachment, and then the decision making in the right direction of where you say you want to go based on your values. I mean, to me, this is one conversation, one big, long golden thread through all of our conversations. And I'm so excited that we got to talk about this one today.